small group, so maybe we can just like introduce ourselves, and it would be nice to get a level of understanding where everyone's knowledge is. So you know, I just want to make sure that what I'm saying makes sense and we could slow down and be as helpful to everyone as possible. So I don't know. The first one on my camera is Corey Fisher.
Hello, hi everyone. My name is Corey Fisher. I'm the Director of Resident Services for the Reno Housing Authority. So I oversee the social services, supportive services side of our agency. So I am kind of just here to learn about the rest of it, and along with our development team.
Perfect. Hi. And I guess whoever wants to jump on and introduce themselves.
Hey, I'll
go.
Go for it. Do it, Britton.
Hey, Judy. Hi, my name is Britton Griffith. I'm with Reno Engineering. We are a civil design company and development services. So we are helping right now do some low-income housing with Nevada Youth Empowerment Project and Truckee Meadows Housing Solutions. And I used to get to work with Corey and JD over at Reno Housing Authority.
Awesome.
My name's Juliana Glock, and I'm with Volunteers of America. And I have a lot of experience around the supportive services in supportive housing, and I'm brand new to like the development side.
Awesome. We're new to supportive. I'm doing a lot of projects on supportive services. Like I understand the development side of things, but the services is just like, so it's nice to feed off of each other. I'm sure you're going to be a good contact. So if you see my email to you, say hi.
I certainly will.
Yeah, I'll go. I'm JD Klippenstein. I'm the Director of Development here at the Housing Authority. Was there another question? I know that you were asking. I jumped on a little bit late.
No, we're just saying hi. Just wanted to, you know who's on.
Awesome. I'll kick it over to Susan.
Hi, I'm Susan Clark. I've been around development for a long time and just I'm interested in this space.
I can go. My name is Hetty Reed. I also work at Reno Housing Authority as a senior project manager in the development department.
Great.
Hi, I'm Mara. I work at Praxis with Ina, and I'm here to, learn from her and also cheer her on.
Thank you. I guess I'll choose Norma.
Yeah, my name's Norma. I'm the owner of Shirley Shared Living, and I have no knowledge about any of this, so I'm here to learn.
And then Wendy and Katrina would be the last one.
Hi there. Sorry for joining a couple minutes late. My name is Wendy Colborn. I'm the Communications Director for the Building and Construction Trades Council of Northern Nevada. We have a C3 nonprofit arm, the Building and Construction Trades Development Corp., which owns a Section 8 affordable housing complex in Reno off of Sutro. And we're looking at building up our portfolio a little more.
Katrina?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Katrina Peters, Homeless Services Coordinator with Washoe County Housing and Homeless Services.
Okay, I think we should just move on. A lot of people are joining now, but I've seen Roberta has joined and Jen has joined as well. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Can you all see? Awesome.
Yes.
So hi, my name is Ina Karana. I'm a senior project manager at Praxis Consulting. What we mostly focus on is helping nonprofit, for-profit, or government agencies develop and finance affordable housing. We also work with housing authorities. We work with RHAs, the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority, and Nevada Rural Housing Authority on repositioning strategies to finance and preserve their public housing portfolio. So far, since 2004, we've secured the financing for over 110 affordable housing developments, which constitutes as 13,200 units, and that's over $2.3 billion in financing. Later on in the presentation, we'll go over some case studies of different financing sources that we've used, just shed some light on different soft financings and other debt structures that we've used in our affordable housing projects. Any given year, we're closing about 10 transactions. There's a group of 7 of us, so there's a lot of work in our small little company. And on a typical year, we're working on, I would say, 30 to 40 projects, all in different stages of the finance or the development phase. Some are just at conceptual, some are near financial closing, some are in construction. So we're juggling a lot of projects with our small little team, but it's a great job. I really enjoy what I do, and it's nice doing something for the society and still satisfying my own, knowledge. So I know JD touched on the LIHTC sides of things last month, but I just wanted to give a little bit of a refresher and then mostly focus on debt financing and gap funds, basically, that are used for these developments. So just a quick overview. So the low-income housing tax credit is the primary funding source for these deals. It's the major source that's used to develop most of the affordable housing stock. There's 2 different LIHTC. The first one being the 9% LIHTC. And typically, most of the projects that are funded with the 9% LIHTC are small. So they're, I would say, near 40 to 70 units. We're doing some deep income targeting. So the units are at 30, 40, or 50% AMI. The 9% LIHTC is highly competitive because it is a deep subsidy. When you see the financing structure or the capital stack of a 9% deal, you'll see that the 9% LIHTC equity is covering almost 70%, I would say, of the cost in a project, and the rest is made up of funds or hard debt. On the other hand, we have the 4% LIHTC world, where I would say it's not as competitive in most states. In Nevada, we haven't reached a bond cap necessarily. Our division has been great at providing the tax-exempt bonds for our projects. There's not much competition, but in other states such as Washington, you see that even the 4% LIHTC and the tax-exempt bonds have become quite scarce, and it's quite competitive. Usually, I would say the 4% LIHTC is focused on building units. So it's really not meant for our supportive housing projects. You're not targeting the 30, 40% AMI. You're mostly targeting 60% AMI with the 4% LIHTC because it has to be coupled with tax-exempt bonds. So there is hard debt on the 4% LIHTC deals, and the only way to support hard debt is to have cash flow. And that cash flow is coming through 60% AMI units.
Hey,
Yeah.
This is JD. Sorry, I interrupt. Can you, just for the group, can you talk briefly, what's the difference between hard debt and soft debt?
Yeah, we're gonna focus on that a little bit later on in the presentation, but just a quick overview. Hard debt would be hard payments. So something that comes into mind that probably all of us could relate to when I'm thinking about hard debt is like our housing mortgage. It's hard payments I'm paying every single month, but for a project, it would be hard payments that I'm paying every single month. I'm paying off a mortgage. Soft debt, you're not making hard payments necessarily every month. So there's different ways that it can be handled. The financing source can either defer the monies, so you're not having to pay the money back. It could just be residual cash flow. So when we're putting together this financing structure, we're partnering up with an investor, and we go through this entire agreement called the operating agreement, which tells us how we're going to split the cash flow. Is it 10% coming to the developer and 90% to the investor? So that funding source is somewhere in that waterfall, and there's a potential to pay back the soft loan, but most likely we're using those monies to service services for the units. So that's the quick little nuance between soft debt and hard debt. When you're thinking of hard debt, think of your home mortgage. You're having to pay hard payments. Soft loans, not necessarily.
Thanks, Anna.
Yeah. I think I've touched basically on the 9% and 4%. Just one thing that you should keep in mind is that the 4% LIHTC has to be paired with tax exempt bonds, or you don't trigger, or you can't become eligible for the 4% LIHTC. So major difference, 9% LIHTC doesn't always have permanent debt or hard debt, but the 4% LIHTC will have hard debt on it. For our purposes, most supportive housing projects would fall under the 9% LIHTC category, not necessarily the 4% LIHTC category. So I just wanted to go through the capital stack of both the 4% LIHTC and the 9% LIHTC. When we're looking at a development budget for any given project, there's costs that are associated with it, and they typically fall under these three categories. So soft cost, hard cost, and land. Soft costs usually consists of architectural fees, engineering, survey, building permits, financing costs. So there is a lot of loans on the deals. There's origination fees, there's construction interest. There's an entire legal team that is working on these projects. You'll probably see, I don't know, anywhere from 4 to 5 lawyers on these calls. So they're all getting fees. There's taxes. A developer is not in a deal without a profit. So there's a developer fee. And then there's hard cost. So all of the money that it takes to actually make the building. So there's construction costs, labor, and then there's land cost, which is extremely high on most of these projects, and usually will be most of the project cost. And to offset these costs, you need a comparable amount of sources. So when we look at the 4% LIHTC, about 30% of those costs are being covered by equity. That's why sometimes the 4% LIHTC is called 30% present value. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. So when you're thinking of 4% LIHTC, just a rule of thumb, about 30% of the cost are going to be covered by equity. And then another major component of it would be the permanent debt or the bonds. And then the last piece that have become more prominent in these 4% LIHTC deals is gap financing. So we'll touch on these sources a little bit later in the presentation, but I just wanted to give a quick overview of what it looks like for the financing structure of the 4% LIHTC. Just want to make sure I covered everything. Oh, going back to the bonds. So the bonds are, again, hard debt on the projects. They're determined by the cash flow available to the project, and they are underwritten based on debt service coverage ratio. And basically what debt service coverage ratio is how much cash flow do you have available to leverage the amount of hard debt. So going back to our handy dandy example of the home mortgage, depending on how much income you have, the bank is giving you a certain amount of a loan. So it's the same thing. Depending on the amount of cash flow, the bank will allow a certain amount of loan allocated to you. In our deals, we are having a debt service coverage ratio from 1.10 to 1.20. So it's a ratio that they use to measure how much of hard debt you're eligible for. Going on to the 9% LIHTC stack. So again, it's the same costs that are associated, but now our financing structure is just a little different. About 70% of the financing stack is composed of the equity. So it's a deeper subsidy. It's covering most of the cost. But we have to remember the 9% LIHTC is not generating a lot of cash flow. It's we're deep targeting, so we have 30%, 40%, 50% AMI units. So we can't really leverage a permanent debt on there. So how do we come up with other sources to fill the gap? And that's when we look to our soft loans, which we'll discuss a little bit later on. So this is ideal, again, for our supportive housing projects where you're not leveraging hard debt. You could use the cash flow to fund your services, which is a critical component for supportive housing projects. Any questions so far? I know I'm kind of going fast and there's a lot of words. I just want to make sure that I'm taking everyone along the ride and everyone's understanding.
Hey, Ina, in terms of the 9%, how many 9% projects do we see in Washoe County on an annual basis?
In Washoe County, I would say 1. So the 9% LIHTC is highly competitive. It's capped in Nevada. Any project can get up to 1.25 million in tax credits. And that's going to be funding one project. Given how high costs are and just to how the numbers work. I know JD went through the calculation of eligible basis and all of that with you all last month. It sort of equates to one project. Our neighbors in Clark County tend to get anywhere to 3 to 4 projects. And then our rural communities will get a 1 project as well.
Thanks, Hannah.
Any other questions? Great. So just wanted to go through some key terms. I've been throwing around hard debt, per mortgage a lot. So just what are some of the key definitions that are associated with hard debt? I think it's important to understand. Last month, JD explained that the equity is a partnership between an investor and the developer, where the developer gets 0.01% interest in the partnership, and then the investor gets 99.99% interest basically in the partnership. But in hard debt, if we think back to money in banking, I don't know if anyone's an economics major here, but hard debt is a IOU type of relationship. They don't stay in the deal in the long run. You're obligated to basically repay that loan. So with an IOU, there's a lot of underwriting and there's a lot of investigation of your finances as an organization, and the due diligence process is quite long when we go through these financing deals. So I would definitely have, a good team that's backing you up and can walk you through the process, have a great legal team that can help you explain what's being said in the legal documents, hire consultants that are basically backing you up so that you are covered. Other key terms to keep in mind, debt service coverage ratio, I kind of explained that already. It's a measure of how much cash flow is available to basically repay your debt obligations. It's a measure that the banks will use to measure their risk basically in a deal, and they want to stay at a ratio between 1.10 to 1.20. Most of our deals are at 1.15. You'll see an interest rate associated with hard debt. So in most basic terms, the interest rate is the cost of borrowing funds. And there's different types of interest rates that they are using to they're using in these deals. You'll see like a LIBOR, a SOFR, and there's different market indices that are used. And the structure is usually the market index plus the spread. So a spread is basically no matter what, they're going to charge that interest, and then plus a extra little cushion because they want to reduce the risk for them. So currently in the market, interest rates are quite high, which are making deals quite difficult to pencil down. We're seeing interest rates anywhere from 6 to 7%. So there's different financing structures that have come into play where developers are trying to cap basically their interest rates and buying and paying upfront for those caps. So they're putting in interest rate ceilings and buying a cap, putting up funds up front so that they're not having to pay in the long run higher interest. And then you also see two terms, amortization and term, being tossed around with hard debt. Again, think of your home mortgage. The most common type of home mortgage used is the 30-year fixed mortgage. So the 30 years would be your amortization. So the best way to explain it is the schedule by which your principal is being divided up based on the number of months or years based on this amortization. And it's basically the longer the amortization, the better for you, because that means the smaller the payment that you're having to pay every month. So these are the basic terms that are being used when we're thinking of hard debt. Any questions on this that I could clarify? Did it make sense? Okay. And I think what most people are interested in this group would probably be the soft financings that are available for our supportive housing projects. I just wanted to touch on each one of these. So home funds are basically federal funds available to affordable housing projects. The home funds require you to target 60% to 50% AMI units. You could even go lower, but the cutoff is sort of 60% AMI. Washoe County is releasing their home fund round November 1st with an application submission by January 8th. This year, I think they have a larger pool of funds available than we usually see. I think they have around 3 million, I would say. And then because of AB 62, where before all of our 4% and tax exempt bond projects had a small token of home funds to get a property tax exemption. Now, because of new legislation, not all projects need home funds to trigger their property tax exemption. So there might be a little bit more money available for projects that actually need the home funds for gap financing. So this could be an appropriate, financing source that some of our supportive housing projects are looking at. This is not a hard debt payment, it's soft. So you're not necessarily obligated to pay it back, but it is a residual cash flow type of loan unless the county or whatever jurisdiction you're working with is willing to defer the home funds for you. The National Housing Trust funds. So these are being allocated by the Nevada Housing Division. The round usually opens in May, and it runs parallel to the 9% LIHTC application. Again, this is a really appropriate an appropriate financing source for our supportive housing projects. It's usually a deferred loan, and it's meant to target 30% AMI units. So you're not running, there's not much competition, I would say, for the National Housing Trust funds, because not all affordable housing projects aren't targeting 30% AMI. There might be a small, mix of units that are targeting 30% AMI. And I'm not sure how much is available this round. We haven't received any notification, but it's usually a good chunk of money that you could ask for. Another financing source is the Federal Home Loan Bank HP funds. Recently, Federal Home Loan Bank created a Nevada targeted fund where you're not really in competition with California or Arizona or their other regions. And Nevada is getting a special set aside so that they can get their, good share of money. You're able to apply for up to, I believe, 1.2 million in HP funds. And there's definitely scoring criteria that you have to apply for. So it is competitive, but again, it's a great loan or a great soft financing source to go for. It's deferred. The bank doesn't want the money back. But you do need to have a nonprofit apply. So if you are a nonprofit, find a partner, and that's how you apply for Federal Home Loan Bank. I think one of the I guess the negative components, I don't know if it's really negative, but setbacks that we have in Nevada is that there's not many member banks here in the state that you can apply through. So the way that the financing source works is that you as a developer can't just go and apply. You have to apply through another member bank. So this is, Wells Fargo, US Bank, and they have to be a member bank in your state. So I think there's only 3 in Nevada. And so highly competitive trying to get that slot and be in their pipeline. So the application is due first week of March. So if you're trying to get into a pipeline for a bank, you kind of need to ask now. And then there's HUD 202, 811 capital advance funds. Again, I don't know if these are always available to our projects. They're based on NOFAs that are released by the federal government. Not always available, so probably won't be a likely financing source for most of our projects. Project-based Section 8 vouchers are great. You want to go for these for all of your supportive housing projects. At the conference, I don't know who attended the Nevada Housing Coalition conference last week, but both, the Reno Housing Authority and the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority are anticipating vouchers becoming available. I believe it's correct me if I'm wrong, JD, I think 125 for RHA, and I'm not sure how much for the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority.
Yeah, it's a HUD VASH, 125 HUD VASH.
Yeah, so, and the project-based Section 8 is different from the HUD VASH. That's sort of the next item in line. But the
Sorry,
HUD
that's what the project basing will be, though. They're not housing choice vouchers, they're HUD VASH vouchers that we're putting into that.
So the VASH vouchers are specifically for veterans. But the housing choice vouchers is anyone who basically income qualifies.
No, I was just saying that 125, that it's from an additional allotment of HUD VASH vouchers we received. That's what will be project based.
Yeah, and my understanding, you guys are trying to get that application out by the end of the year.
Yes.
But the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority has an RFP currently released, and it's due, I think, November 13th. So if you have a project, apply now. And then going down the list, state housing tax credits. So I believe there's only been 2 projects so far that have used the state housing tax credit. You're eligible for up to $3 million in tax credits. And it's very similar, I would say, to the 9% to the 4%. But the only difference is it's a one-time equity contribution, which happens at closing, and you do need to find an investor. In most of our other projects, when we ask for up to $3 million, we're getting about, $2.7 million in equity coming into deals. So there are definitely players who are looking at the state housing tax credit. It is underutilized, so it is definitely something that you can think about for your supportive housing projects. However, it is only available to our 4% LIHTC deals. There is criteria in the qualification, the QAP for Nevada, where it depends, the state tax credit depends on how many units you are producing. So look at the tier and see what you qualify for. So it might be a potential source that you want to go for. There is also the Growing Affordable Housing Finance Program funds, so GAP funds. A lot of our 4% LIHTC deals are using these. It's actually only available for the 4% LIHTC deals. Up to $3 million are allocated to projects. And it actually hasn't been used much, at least not on deals that we're working on in the last year or two, given the large influx of home ARP funds, HM&I funds, and the community housing funds that have come into play in Nevada. So going down the list, I guess home ARP. I hope many of you have heard of the Home Means Nevada initiative that allocated $500 million to affordable housing. So a lot of those monies are actually already used up, or on the road to being used up, I would say. The Nevada Housing Division has already selected the projects that would go forward with home ARP for the state. I know that Washoe also has some home ARP monies left over. I believe $600,000 is available for supportive services. I'm not sure how much is available for development, but it's definitely a resource that you could look towards. I believe Elaine Wiseman at Washoe County might be a good resource or contact to reach out to and just get a better understanding of what's available. And then there's community housing funds, which are specific to Southern Nevada. They've already had one round where they, I think, allocated about $160 million in community housing funds. They are potentially looking at another round where they're going to make $60 million available. Currently, they also have a home ARP round that's available. Applications are due November 14th. One piece of the home ARP monies available are specifically for supportive services. And I think they have 7 to 10 million available. I don't know. Mara, do you know how much is available?
I'm not sure.
And then we also have our rural projects. Oops, going back. So there are USDA 538 loans, USDA 515 loans available to rural projects. These are just loans that are available to rural projects, but at a much lower interest rate than we typically see on our perm loans on our 4% LIHTC deals. So if you are a rural project, I would definitely look into USDA loans that are available to you. Any questions on all of these soft financing sources that I could clarify? Kind of easy since we have the list right here.
I know this is JD. Can you walk us through a bit like how vouchers, project-based vouchers would help, you know, with the capital stack? I understand how it helps with operating, but how does a voucher actually help you get more money into the project?
Sure. So most of our supportive housing projects are targeting 30% AMI, but with the project-based Section 8 vouchers or VASH vouchers, we're able to set rents at payment standards or even up to 120% of FMR. So you're generating more cash flow. So one way, as JD already mentioned, you could use that cash flow for supportive services, or you can use that cash flow to leverage more permanent debt. So if you remember, hard debt is associated with the amount of cash flow available. The more cash flow you're generating, the more permanent debt you'll be able to generate. So you're lowering your gap by having these vouchers available to your projects by being able to leverage your debt.
And as I understand it, Ina, you project-based vouchers, if you get them, you can then show those rents on your pro forma when you're securing the other funding. But if you don't have project-based vouchers, you can't show voucher rents unless they've been like awarded to the project.
So under HOTMA, a housing authority can sole source project-based vouchers to projects as long as they have won other federal funding through competitive processes. And during that competitive process, you haven't shown project-based vouchers. So if you're not trying to get those project-based vouchers sole sourced through to you, then it's okay. You could show the batch vouchers or whatever, because you're still going through a competitive process to get the project-based vouchers. But if the housing authority is willing to sole source to your project, you can't show those vouchers. So it's best practice not to show the vouchers until you have an award in hand. And when you're going through underwriting, there's tenant-based vouchers, and then there's project-based vouchers. The investors and banks will not underwrite to tenant-based vouchers. They will only underwrite to project-based vouchers that have hot contracts up to 20 years.
Awesome, thanks. And just, I know we're gonna do a deeper dive on vouchers later on, but I just wanted to make sure I was tracking.
Yeah, I know it's like a big web of how everything connects. Great. And we've talked about soft monies and how they're great, deferred, they're based on residual cash flow, but there's definitely issues. Nothing's free, I would say. The more soft fundings that you have available, there's an additional layering of complexity. All of these programs have their own set of requirements and regulations. Additional targeting is being required. So you're required for some of these financing sources to have 30% AMI units. You're also required to have certain amenities depending on how competitive the projects are or what kind of project the jurisdiction or the allocating agency is looking to fund. And it's difficult trying to get multiple jurisdictions to all come together and, agree all the time and reach financial closings. But I would say, Washoe, Clark County, NHD, they're all great to work with. Everyone has one common goal of building more affordable housing and making a success. So we always reach the finish line, but there's always issues along the way. But we have our lawyers to handle that. So like I mentioned before, make sure you have a good legal team that is representing your side, that is reading the regulations, that you understand what you're getting yourself into. And then again, soft monies are scarce. They're not available to all, and they're highly competitive. Not much money is available, but what is available, everyone is looking for that same source. So make sure that your project is well thought out, that you are making the connections with the local jurisdictions, you're reaching out to them, and you're explaining your projects, and everyone's willing to work with you. Everyone is willing to give you the extra time to make your project a success. So definitely contact the people that are working on these grants. The staff are great to work with. I thought it would be interesting to have some case studies, just go through some projects that we are currently working on, that we've worked on. So currently, hopefully, I'm going to say we're closing next week on this deal. So this is Pebble and Eastern Senior Apartments in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's a 195 unit affordable senior rental development. It's a 4% LIHTC and bond deal. And earlier on, I mentioned, most of our 4% LIHTC deals aren't doing deep targeting. They're not usually supportive housing, but, this project has 20 units set aside for homeless seniors with disabilities, homeless veterans, or other qualifying low-income individuals in Clark County. So they're at 30% AMI. And we were able to make that possible because it has a lot of layering of soft financing. In addition, the land is donated through BLM. So Southern Nevada has this unique program called SNPLMA, which is Southern Nevada Public Land Management Act, where our developer Ovation Design and Development and Coordinated Living, through a competitive process, were able to win 95% discounted land based on the fair market value of that land. So they're not paying that much for land as they would in a normal situation. So they're cutting out, you know, one major component of that three-piece layer that I showed you. Just looking at some of the sources that we are using in the project. So their permanent mortgage is $10.6 million. They were able to win $7.5 million through the Clark County Community Housing Fund. They were also, as a part of their RFP for the BLM donated land, were given $1.8 million in home funds. They received $2 million through the National Housing Trust Fund program. And that was because, you know, they have 20 units at 30% AMI. Also, they won $1 million through the Federal Home Loan Bank of HP. And then with all of this, they are leveraging about $22.8 million in equity. And they're deferring about $2.1 million of their developer fees, coming to a total of about $47.8 million in financing that they sort of accumulated over the course of 3 years. So it's been quite a process going through the BLM, but you know, they're closing next week. So we're really excited for that. And then if you look at, you know, some of their costs, this is their land cost, the $237,000. That is through the 95% discount that they're receiving through BLM. It's not typical of most of our projects. You're seeing higher, you know, land costs and building costs associated with our affordable housing projects, but through this unique program, you know, they're able to serve, you know, 30% AMI units, and that is a major component through the BLM donation. So, you know, each dollar of gap funding that they were able to win, they're leveraging about $2.89 of tax exempt bonds and deferred developer fee and equity, and all of their units are affordable. Another unique project that we've worked on, this one is in operations. It broke ground in 2019, I believe. So it is 50 units of service enriched affordable housing for veterans in Clark County. The developer on this project was Accessible Space Inc. They have a very big network of supportive services in Southern Nevada, which is a part of this project. But a unique component of this project was the 50 project-based vouchers, VASH vouchers that are associated with this project. A lot of those VASH vouchers are being basically utilized to provide the supportive services that are necessary for their targeted population. Looking at the housing, the capital stack, this is a 9% deal. So they had deep income targeting 30%, 40%, 50% AMI units. There is no permanent mortgage on this project. So they raised about $2.1 million in home funds, $2.3 million in National Housing Trust funds, and were able to get equity in the amount of $8.5 million. And then going through the next slide. So for every dollar of gap funding that they raise, they're leveraging about $2.91 of equity and other funds in order to produce about 100% affordable housing. Yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. Is there any questions about these projects, your projects, anything I could clarify?
And I so appreciate you walking through those capital stacks. I had a question. I know on some of the performers we're working on, this is based off like the Pebble and Eastern senior apartments. The hard costs, if you look at that, it's 166,000 a unit in hard costs. If it's you take that 32 million divided by the 195. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out what magic sauce they have to get hard costs down to that level, because I imagine some of the project costs. So I'm wondering if you can speak to some of that.
Sure. Ovation is one of our most efficient developers, I would say.
Are they vertically integrated?
Yes, they
Okay.
do property management. They have their own GC company, and they also have, you know, a whole other side of market rate apartments. So I'm not familiar of what they're doing, but they're doing something, and it's you know, they're generating a lot of units, so we're all for it.
So the idea is they have some cost savings because they figure out a way to do a lot of things in-house that usually folks are bidding and bringing other contractors on to do.
Correct.
Okay. I was just trying to figure that out.
Yeah. We all need Ovation. Any other questions?
Sorry, one last question, I promise, from me. What, in terms of the partnerships, I know that you see on these especially like 9% or supportive housing projects, like is it common to see a developer who also provides services, or is it do you see like a developer partnering with a service provider to create the permanent supportive housing?
So actually, we don't have, you know, a big history of permanent supportive housing in Nevada. We have people who do development, and then we have people who do services. So it's very unlikely where we've seen a project that has a developer doing it all. Most of our recent projects that are going in as permanent supportive housing projects are partnering with service agencies. So the developer knows how to do the real estate component, and then they're partnering with the services agency who wants to get into development, I guess.
And then are those contracts, or are they like they're in the deal from the get-go? Like they're a development partner alongside that developer. Okay.
Depends. Some are part of the partnership, so they have GP interest. Others, they are just there for the services, so they have a MOU in place with the partnership. Any other questions?
I have a question. I know you touched on it a bit in this, but I think it's an important takeaway when we talk about supportive housing. But how can you synthesize what debt means in like a 30% or below AMI project versus like an 80% or more? You know, just because putting together your capital stuff is different. So what if I'm looking to get into development, aside from building that capital stack, what first step should I be taking or looking at to make sure that I can make it work?
So most of our projects that are at 30% MI, they don't have hard debt on them, because that cash flow is being used for supportive services, or they're just not generating enough cash flow to make their everyday functions come about. Whereas the 80% AMI units, those are, you know, more in line with, I mean, with the 4% LIHTC or the bond deals, you're not going up to 80% AMI unless you're doing income averaging. You're able to basically generate more permanent debt, but then you're not serving the population of, you know, homeless or the intent of the supportive housing projects.
I guess follow up really quick. What if I have an existing property and I want to look into supportive services? Obviously, I wouldn't need to put together the money for like for development, but where should I look for that?
Like how to start off?
Yeah.
I would, if you're new to this, I would definitely hire a consultant.
Give Ina some business.
Yeah, I mean, give Eric some business. I know it's kind of, I don't know if that's the right answer, but it's kind of difficult, you know, just getting into it and navigating yourself through all these different funding sources. The more backup you have, the better. And there's a lot of components, as you know, RHA is going through their own development. And I think they could speak to the amount of craziness that occurs and brain damage that they're probably going through.
Yeah, I'm not at 100% right now. I would say though, to Amanda's question, one of the things that RHA has been like toying around with is what is our role in the permanent supportive housing space, and is that as a developer partner with, you know, community-based service providers. So if there are folks who are interested on the call, or you know, there's not like we have a project and money lined up, but I do think that those are partnerships we want to see more of in the community. So come talk to me if you're in Reno.
Awesome. Love opening those lines of communication for things like this. Are there any more questions for Ina? Looking like no. Before we hop off, I do have a couple reminders. First off, thanks for hopping on the Zoom today. We appreciate your participation. And then for the next workshop for November, I'm going to post the link in the chat to register. JD and Hetty will be kind of at the helm of that session, and we'll be talking more about developing a pro forma. It'll be from 12 to 4. I believe it's an in-person workshop, correct?
Yep, that's what we're aiming for. But bring your laptop.
Bring your laptop.
Because you don't want to do a pro forma by hand. You will not want to do it ever again.
Modern technology.
Can I say one more thing?
Go for it.
Thank you. I want to say thank you. Especially is it Britton? I don't know how to pronounce your name. Well, thank you for showing your, you know, camera. It was nice. You were nodding your head. I'm like, okay, someone's understanding what I'm saying. So
I get it.
it's really nice.
Thank you so much.
Open.
All right. And with that, I think we're all good to go. If you're wanting to register for November's, the link is in the chat.
Thank you so much, Ina. You rock.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Thank you.